Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi, this is Dave Garn from Depeche Mode, and you are listening to
My Nerd World.
And welcome to it, Depeche Mode, the podcast. I'm your host, John Justice. Thank you so much for checking out another episode devoted to the greatest band on the face of the planet. As always, if you want to email, talkshownerd@gmail.com is the email address. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment there as well. No news to get to this week relating to Depeche Mode. The tour continues, the final fourth leg of the tour. There doesn't seem to be any major changes to the set list. Dave and Martin seem pretty content on Before We Drown and Behind the Wheel being added to the set list, replacing those tracks, most notably A World in My Eyes, as we've talked about on previous episodes, and continues to raise the question in my mind over what version of the show will we be getting in full when the physical release comes out later on this year. So that remains to be seen. The only item I really wanted to focus on this week, since there's no new news to share, are my thoughts on the Before We Drown remixes that came out last week after last week's episode dropped. Here's how I'm going to handle that. I could spend time giving you my thoughts on it. I really enjoyed this remix package, by the way. I feel like this is the best remix package that we have received of the remixes from Memento Mori. I was pleasantly surprised with all of the tracks. What I want to do, though, is go to you, and I'll share my thoughts as you share your thoughts, as I've received a lot of reviews relating to the Before We Drowned remixes. So with that, let's get to it. Listener feedback this week here on My Nerd World and Depeche Mode, the podcast. First, Chad writes in, so excited. Had to share my opinion of the Before We Drown remixes. Masterpiece. There's no skipping for me when it comes to this set of remixes. Each one skillfully incorporates the vocals, harmonies, and some original elements while elevating the overall atmosphere. The Signal remix is truly incredible, and I absolutely agree. It is my favorite of the batch. They've shown great respect for the original song and remixed it in a manner that aligns with how the band might have approached it themselves, in my opinion. The Never Let Me Down aggro mix, subtly flirting in the background at the beginning, got me excited. And I love how, along with the bass, it hits hard towards the end. I'm blown away. In my view, the Signal mix should have been the album version, and the album mix should have been the single edit. Thanks, Chad. I wouldn't go so far as to say that I want it as the album version. However, if I were making, and I've done this with some of my favorite remixes off the album, if I were making an alternate Memento Mori release, the Signal mix of Before We Drown would be the one that I would choose. So thank you, as always, for the thoughts, Chad, and for writing in. And to everybody who writes in, you're all friends of the show, just in case I forget to add that label to any of your listener feedback this week. Next up, we got Jan. I'm writing to you after a long time because, from my point of view, nothing fundamental has happened recently. Things changed with the single Before We Drown, and I jumped on the Depeche Mode wave again. Before We Drown is my second favorite song on Memento Mori after Always You. I find that interesting, by the way. A lot of people lean into Always You. My favorite track on the album is Ghosts Again, and my second favorite would have to be Don't Say You Love Me, with Before We Drown coming in a close third. For me, it is already one of the best DM songs ever. It shows how the spirit of Martin's creativity merged with that of those two who are mostly not talked about, Aigner and Gordino. How much I like this song has also influenced my view on its remixes, I guess. The first remix takes the approach I like best when it comes to remixes and covers. It keeps the spirit of the song, but adds its own vastly different emotion. I think you might like the second remix the most because it keeps the structure of the song to a large extent and thus reassembles a maxi single. The third remix is the least interesting for me, and probably for me as well, although I appreciate the use of the drums like in Route 66, and the interludes remind me of 90s dance legends LFO or Orbital. I am a huge Orbital fan, so nice shout out there. Finally, the last remix is a great dance track for me. Overall, this collection of remixes is an excellent piece of work. For me, the best from Memento Mori so far. Best wishes and keep rocking, Jan. Yep, and I agree as well. Next up, we have Danielle, who writes this. I'll keep it short this week for once, with a smiley, laughy face. How great is the Signal remix of Before We Drown? I love the subtle Never Let Me Down Again mashup. Nostalgia is always a big winner for us longtime fans. Well done, Danielle. Friend of the show and friend of mine, Matt writes in, hear that souped-up bass line straight out of Never Let Me Down Again, the split mix, talking about the Signal mix. Bravo. This mixer gets props from me for the homage. Finally, a decent set of remixes. The wet mix is cool. But really, these mixes just underscore how great the album version is. That's a great point too, Matt. Such a special song. Dave and his collaborators are so underrated as songwriters, in my opinion. That Signal mix has also has some Head Star elements to it. Again, nice nod to the past. You know, the one thing that's so unique about that Before We Drown, the original track, is just the way that they use the percussion in that track. It's very, very unique. It's not like Depeche Mode hasn't used that type of drum before or that percussion before, but the way it's layered and textured, it's one of the things that immediately drew me to that track. And there's never a moment in Before We Drown where I get let down. A song like Should Be Higher off of Delta Machine, I had really high expectations for when I first heard it in its original when I first heard it originally, when it was performed live for the first time on the David Letterman show those many years ago. I just always get tripped up with Dave's high-pitched vocals in the chorus of the song. It just never landed for me. The rest of the song is fantastic, and if there had been a change there for me personally as a fan, I would love that track, but I have such a difficult time when Dave hits those high notes. It just doesn't work for me. Before We Drown is one of those tracks where it starts off strong and never relents and is just solid from beginning to end. Next up, Dave Fulton writes, 1, I love Depeche Mode. 2, I really like Wet Legs music. Can't get enough of their latest albums. Of their debut albums. 3, that remix is a miss, says Dave Fulton. The music itself is fine, but don't mess with the vocals like that. It's insulting to Dave's work. I almost would have preferred an instrumental remix. And 4, and he's talking about the Grammy win for Wet Legs Wagging Tongue remix that I talked about on last week's show. And 4, if you're giving an award for a Depeche Mode remix, you clearly give it to Anna for her remix of My Cosmos Is Mine. Yeah, I totally agree.
My Nerd World.
That's my version of a clap on the episode this week. Completely and totally agree. I love that Anna remix of My Cosmos Is Mine. The only thing that I don't like about the Anna remix of My Cosmos Is Mine is just how it slows and breaks down in the middle. I need to make an edit of that. And I think if you edit that part out of it, that remix is fantastic. Dave Fulton goes on to say, that remix sounds like an actual collaboration, even if only in spirit rather than an ironic goof. Thank you, as always, David. Great to hear from you. Next up, we have a friend of the show, Michael Tennant, who writes this. I hope this isn't tacky of me to send this to you, but I wanted to share the new album with those who I think will appreciate it. I just released it yesterday, and though I know it's no Depeche Mode, I'm quite proud of it. I always have a code for you to redeem a copy if you want to hear something new. He provided a link here and the code as well. I've actually put this link up if you want to go and take a listen to it. You can head on over to the notes for the podcast, and there you can go and check out Michael Tennant's music. The link is available there in the notes for the podcast this week. So if you happen to be on YouTube, just scroll on down, see the notes. You'll see the link to check out Michael Tennant's music. I've listened to it. I really enjoy the work that he does. It's really, really great stuff. And you being a Depeche Mode fan, I know you'll probably get a kick out of it as well. Or if you're listening to it via the podcast on your phone, just go into the actual episode and you can find the link there. There's a link there to this and a lot of the other links that I've always shared before on the show. I've left those all up in the notes of the show in case you might have missed one from a previous episode. Michael goes on to say, thanks for all you do, keeping us devotees entertained with the podcast. Each episode is a nice distraction from work and makes it easier to get through the day. Thank you again, Michael, for reaching out, and I encourage everybody to go and check out Michael Tennant's music available on Bandcamp. And again, that link is available in the notes for this week's show. Next up, who do we got here? I believe this is Jason, who writes in. Great shout out on the remixes for Before We Drown dropping. I couldn't see a whiff of a rumor on the web. Fingers crossed we get the Vinegar Hill session as well. He goes on to say, what a great bundle of remixes they are. All keeping a lot of the original mix and all worthy of repeat listening. I've not said that too many other times over the last 30 years or so about some of the remix packages. Over the years, too many remixes have borne no resemblance to the original, with no recognizable parts from the song, that the remixers may as well have released the track under their own name as their own track. By the way, I would encourage everybody, if you're on YouTube, go find the Signal YouTube page. Just type in SIGNL. They put up a video where they put text over their remix of Before We Drown for a couple of minutes, explaining how they went through the process of creating the song. It's really, really interesting to see what their intent was and how they really nailed their intent, in my opinion, in making that remix. So again, go to YouTube and find the SIGNL, the Signal page up on YouTube, and you can find it there. Let's see. Jason goes on to say, the AC Wet Mix, fantastic to see Alessandro Cortini of Nine Inch Nails and Sonio fame do a remix. I like how the start exposes all those bleeps and stabs and showcases how well Depeche Mode intricately weave these incidental sounds into a song to create something magnificent. By the way, I didn't realize on one of the... I don't have it up in front of me. But on one of the remixes for Wagging Tongue, and you got to forgive me, I'm going into my phone right now because I have it in one of my playlists. I just want to make sure that I share which one it is, and I got to find the right playlist. Here we go. The remix that I am referring to is the Wagging Tongue, Edu, Imber and Clement remix. It just dawned on me the other day that they use the sample from Playing the Angel Suffer Well. I've heard that. That's probably my favorite Wagging Tongue remix. And I remember thinking, boy, this sounds awfully familiar. I don't think this is from the song. And then I realized finally that it was a sample from Suffer Well from Playing the Angel. So there you go. All right, back to Jason's email. It's been a long week. It's Thursday when I'm recording this. Can I just say it's been a long week of regular radio shows, and I haven't had a nap today, so I'm a little bit fried. All right. To the Signal remix, Jason writes, when I heard the intro, I was reminded of those live tracks from the Devotional Tour with the extended intros and was anticipating this going in a similar direction by feeding into the main arrangement for the song. Instead, when the strings came in and with Martin's soaring harmonies, it reminded me of Goldfrapp at their ethereal electronic best. The Anella remix, a great remix. Chris Avant-Garde remix, another great remix with its heavy thumping beat, and I was thinking to myself, I hope this remixer was given a chance to remix People Are Good as well. Also, Avid Pro Tools have uploaded a tour of the Jungle Studios on YouTube. If the name doesn't sound familiar to some listeners, it does for me, but for some it may not, right? When they see one of the studios, they will know it. And the owner gives a bonus special mention to DM. who worked on the album there. As a special bonus for Star Wars fans, look out for a stormtrooper lurking in the corner of the corridor in the background. Depeche Mode and Star Wars, just perfect. Regards, Jason. Thank you, Jason, as always. It's great to hear from you. And lastly, you know what? I'm going to save this. I just got an email that came in from a friend of the show, Stephanie, who has written up a very lengthy concert review to share on the show. But I want to make sure that I have some time to go through all of this, so I am going to hang on to this particular email until next week's show. Next up, we will go to Lee Raffay from Niagara Falls, Canada, who writes in, "Hi, John. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm a bit late to the party, as it's Valentine's Day, and I'm just catching up with your February 8th podcast. Love the article on Policy of Truth. That was interesting. I always appreciate your research on DM. As for the opinion of Dave's black Band-Aid, like you said about it being protective of those digits as far as the wear and tear on his hands and the mic are concerned, myself, I believe it's a superstition thing. I know Dave has a lot of supernatural beliefs. His back tattoo, the crow skull on his neck chain. The Band-Aid may be a reminder to keep going on this energetic tour, and that he has the support of whomever or whatever it reminds him of. Maybe his family. Just my thoughts. Keep up the great work and stay Depeshed. Have a great day, Leia. My apologies, I'm not saying that right. Thank you so much for the email. All right, and lastly, Amy, greetings from Germany, normally from Worcestershire, who writes this, having entered a state of post-concert depression after Birmingham, bad pun, I know, I saw there were still tickets available for the gigs in Berlin, so here I am. I get to see DM in my favorite city without the hubby or the kids in the way. I'm also indulging my own nerd world as I lived and worked in Germany 20 years ago, and I love coming back when I can. I'm hoping to see the revamped set list tonight, but as this is the second Berlin gig, I reckon it could be more like the previous leg. I'm really hoping for somebody, but just glad to be here regardless. Greetings from Germany, Amy. Thank you so much, Amy, and to everybody that wrote in this week. And Stephanie, I will definitely be getting to your listener feedback and concert review on next week's show. Told you I was keeping it short this week. NASCAR starts for me. This is a really exciting time for John Justice. The three things that distract me the most in life, Depeche Mode, NASCAR, and Star Wars, are all happening at the same time. They got Depeche Mode still on tour. More excitement coming from them later this year. I've got NASCAR kicking off in Daytona this weekend. And I've got Bad Batch Season 3, the Star Wars animated show that drops next week. All things coming up, John. Hey, if you're a longtime listener, frequent listener to the show, thank you so much for checking it out. I'll be back again next week. If this is your first time listening to Depeche Mode, the podcast, and you like to read science fiction, I hope you'll take a moment to support my nerd world and take a look at my science fiction space opera series. Set in the future where air and space flight culture has replaced car culture, it is inspired in part by Depeche Mode, life in the so-called space age. The world we live in and life in general, Depeche Mode plays a large part in the underlying themes of the story. The main character himself, Taft Guardia, is a massive Depeche Mode fan at a time when the music of the 80s through the 2000s is nostalgic and popular among the characters of the story. If you're familiar with Ready Player One, I took a lot of inspiration from that in terms of having references in the story. They also feature references to Depeche Mode, both direct and indirect, while telling an exciting science fiction space opera saga. After Earth faces its end, follow pilots Taft, Catha, and their crew on a journey of survival across the galaxy as they fight for their future among the stars. So listen, if you like your science fiction to be epic, filled with some romance, amazing technology, and action, Embark is perfect for you. It's written for adults, but it's great for ages 11 plus in terms of content. Nothing explicit, no language or violence that's too over the top. Think Star Wars in terms of that kind of content. Pick up Embark Book 1 today. Available in ebook, Kindle Unlimited if you're a subscriber, hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. Available on Amazon.com, and you can purchase hardcover or paperback versions of any book in the completed 7-book series, 7 books at all, by emailing me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. You can actually pick up those hardcovers and paperbacks cheaper than you can on Amazon. I'll sign them, and the shipping is really cheap as well. So, again, email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com, to pick up whatever book in the series you want. And if you have read the books, take a moment and go and leave a review up on Amazon.com. I can always use reviews for all the books in the series. Search for John, Jon Justice on Amazon, or again, go to mynerdworld.net or email me. All right, that wraps up the show for this week. I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe. And I'll talk to you again next week. Bye.
Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi,